Hello, my name is Jacqueline Pollauf, and today I wanted to talk about dances within harp repertoire. For many people, the harp is associated with slow and dreamy music, things like lullabies and nocturnes. And while the harp can do that really well, of course it is a versatile instrument that can play a variety of music. So by contrast, today I wanted to focus on dances, music that is really rhythmically driven. What I'm going to do today is discuss several different pieces of harp repertoire, all different types of dances. And I've selected several pieces at different difficulty levels. So I'll start with the simplest piece, and then they'll escalate from there. And for each one, I'll talk a bit about the piece, play a passage or two, and then discuss some different tips and practice approaches. So hopefully with these different difficulty levels, you'll be able to find a piece that matches your playing level, something that you could work on with dances and rhythms in your own playing. And also you might get some ideas for pieces that you could review, or also pieces to aspire to. Let's start with Little Waltz by Marcel Grandjany. This comes from his book, First Grade Pieces for the Harp, written with fellow composer Jane Wyden-Saul. And this is a beginning level piece, playable on a lever harp. Now, a waltz is always a dance in three, and in this piece, Grandjany is using a really straightforward rhythm. Essentially, it's just steady quarter notes. I'll go ahead and play the first phrase so you can hear it. So you can hear that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 throughout it. And one thing that a lot of students find difficult about it is to keep this piece moving in such a steady fashion. Frequently they'll play and they'll have a little pause between measures. Which makes sense from an intellectual standpoint because you've completed the measure, and then that gives you a chance to set up your hands for the next measure. But of course, musically, it doesn't make any sense. So a great way to practice in that instance is to play the measure plus one extra beat so that you're really focusing on that transition, which would sound like this. So you've just done 1, 2, 3, 1, moving right on into the next measure. And once that is smooth, you could play 2 measures plus 1 beat. And you could keep going in this way to really work on making sure that all the transitions are smooth and there are no gaps or pauses between measures. So I think this piece is a great choice to really think about a simple dance rhythm and focus on a piece where rhythm is so crucial to the success of the piece overall. Next, we have an intermediate level piece. This is a Minuet by Jean-Jacques Rosseau. It's arranged for the harp by Samuel Milligan and comes from his book, Medieval to Modern, Volume 1, and it's playable on a lever harp. So this is quite a bit more difficult than the Little Waltz in a lot of different ways. For one thing, there are these large rolled chords throughout it. Also, especially the left hand has to do a lot more placing and replacing. And rhythmically, although we're still within the 3/4 time signature, there are eighth notes mixed in for more complex rhythms. So a minuet is similar to a waltz in that they're both in a 3/4, but I think minuets tend to be a little bit more elegant with kind of longer lines, whereas waltzes frequently have more of a bounce to them. I'll play the first 8 measures. So of course, in this minuet, the rhythm is very important, and sometimes students are aware of that and they're trying to have a really nice, smooth and flowing rhythm, but sometimes their hands just don't quite cooperate with that goal. So when you have a piece like this where there's quite a bit going on and quite a bit of hand independence, one way you can practice is to play a measure with both hands and then play the subsequent measure with just one hand, so you can focus on having a smooth physical setup to the second measure. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll play the first measure with both hands, and then for the second measure, I'll play just the left hand alone, watching to make sure that it's really smooth, moving from the big chord in the first measure to placing the 3 fingers in the second measure. And then if that looks good, you could switch it and play the first measure with both hands, but the second measure with the right hand, same thing, checking for the physical setup there. And you might go back and forth several times with each approach and then put the hands together to see if you can have both hands shift really smoothly. And then you could keep going on to the next measures, practicing the same way and really focusing on that smooth physical approach and setup. And frequently I find that after a student has done this work to make everything really solid, then it's much easier to focus on the rhythm and have that nice steady pulse and feeling the 3 very strongly throughout. So sometimes you have to do some preparatory work before you can have the rhythm at the forefront of your mind. Here we have a really famous piece from the harp repertoire. This is Carlos Salzedo's Seguidilla from his Suite of 8 dances. It's written at an intermediate level and is playable on a pedal harp. And a seguidilla is a Spanish dance. In this one, Salzedo is using a lot of 8th notes and 16th notes, and I think the combination here gives it a really sprightly feel. One interesting thing is that throughout this, the hands rarely play at the same time. Instead, they keep trading off, and the rhythm then is a composite of the 2 hands put together. So here are the first 8 measures. So with the hands being intertwined like that, there's some interesting things about how the hands relate to the rhythm. For one thing, the left hand is almost always playing on the beats, and then the right hand is playing in between on a lot of the ands and everything. So one way that you could practice it to really accent the rhythm would be to play the left hand and then gradually add the right hand in so that you could really feel the strong parts of the rhythm. For example, if we take the first 2 measures, I could just play the left hand alone to start, which would go like this: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's a pretty straightforward rhythm. And then I could add in just the first 3 notes of each measure for the right hand. So you could go 1 and a 2, 3, 1 and a 2, 3. And that would be a nice chance to see if your 1, 2, and 3 are really steady. Then you could add in the next right hand chords. You'd have 1 and a 2 and 3, 1 and a 2 and 3. And then you could put in the final right hand chord and have the rhythm complete. 1 and a 2 and 3 and 1 and a 2 and 3 and. So I think in a piece like this, with the intertwined hands and intertwined rhythm, kind of breaking it down to something simple and then gradually putting it back together is a great way to focus on the rhythm and make sure it's really clear and brings across the mood of the piece well. Now I'd like to look at a piece written by Scott Joplin, who was famous for writing rags. And of course, ragtime music is a forerunner of jazz, so there's a lot of rhythmic complexity and syncopation to it. This is Joplin's Peacherine rag, my own transcription, and I'd say that it's written at about a late intermediate or early advanced level. It's playable on a pedal harp. And rhythmically, this is structured like so many rags, where the left hand is keeping a very steady and straightforward rhythm, just 8th notes here. And then the right hand has all these different 8th note and 16th note patterns that fit in and around the left hand. So here's a bit of the first section. So given everything that's happening rhythmically here, sometimes one approach to really focus on the rhythm is to take away the notes entirely and to just tap the rhythm. And usually when I have a student do this, what I ask them to do is to tap the right hand rhythm with their right hand on this part of the soundboard and tap the left hand rhythm with their left hand over here. So it's exactly the same hand setup and rhythm setup. It's just now you don't have to worry about reading the notes or the strings. So in that case, if I just do the first couple bars, it would sound like this. That really helps to focus the mind and the ear on the rhythm. And let's say that you've gone through and you've done the entire first section tapping out the rhythm like that, either with or without the metronome. And then a great next step would be to combine some playing and some tapping. For example, you could go ahead and play the left hand, but continue to tap the right hand, which would go like this for the first few bars. And after that, you could switch and play the right hand and tap the left hand. So all of these different kind of percussive approaches, again, really just put the rhythm at the forefront and highlight it in practicing. Finally today, I wanted to take a look at a piece for harp and flute. This is the Histoire du Tango by Argentinian composer Astor Piazzolla. And Piazzolla was really well known for his compositions featuring the tango. This is written at an advanced level. It's playable on a pedal harp, and in it, each movement represents the tango from a different time period. I thought I'd play a couple passages from the first movement, which is the tango at 1900. And of course, since this is a harp and flute piece rather than a solo piece, there's the added complexity of the flute rhythm. So there's more layers to this than the solo works. I'm going to go ahead and play two passages to start. The first one is from the main theme of the first movement, and throughout it, the harp is just playing the same rhythm over and over, which is considered the tango rhythm. And you'll hear that it's descending pitch-wise throughout the harp, so it just keeps dropping as it's going. And the hands are in parallel with each other. And now I'm going to jump over and play a little section from the middle of the piece where the hands are more intertwined rhythmically, but still playing a similar rhythm. So really within this piece, I think all of the various practice approaches that I've been discussing can apply quite well. There's chances to work on the hands independently or kind of building up to the complex rhythms. Sometimes taking a couple of bars and then adding on slowly to that can work really well. And of course, practicing with the metronome, always great when focusing on rhythm. But overall, when I'm working on something like this, and especially with the addition of the flute, one thing I think of after I've done all that work and kind of making sure that everything is solid and sure, is thinking about the fact that it is a dance and wanting to sound dance-like. Sometimes I even imagine people dancing in my mind as I'm playing to really give me another way to link up with the rhythm and make that a priority in my playing. I hope that this video has given you some ideas for a repertoire featuring dances, and also given you some suggestions for various practice approaches. Playing dances can be so much fun and so satisfying. So good luck to you in your own playing.